Will the Saints trade down in the NFL draft? We are here in New Orleans. Football. They certainly should. If we're in a situation where, I say that caveat, asterisk, if you will, they should if the player they want isn't there. I think this should be just commonplace. If you're targeting certain players and they are not at where you're picking, instead of reaching for another player that's on your board, why not just trade down even a spot, 2 spots, 3 spots? If you can find a trade partner, trade down, take that same player, but just get some assets. I think that makes the most sense. Now, it is easy to say life is not a game of Madden. Sometimes there's not a trade partner. Sometimes there's no trade market for what you're looking for. You can't just willingly say we want to trade down from 14 to 17 without there being someone else on the other end, right? So it sounds good in practice, but I would do this all the time. Unless you have somebody you really want at that position, trade down, get assets, get capital. That makes sense to me.
Welcome back to Indianapolis. You're watching The Dot, presented by Matt Bowers Auto Group. I have one big question. We're looking at the draft picks.
Yes.
They got the pick in the first round, the pick in the second round, and then nothing until the fifth round where they have a bunch of fifths, a bunch of them are comp picks, and then the sixth and the seventh round. That doesn't give them a lot of ammo to address the needs they have. So I'm kind of thinking
they do. Well, hold on now. They do have a lot of ammo if you look at it from just strictly assets, right? Because what do they have? 5 fifth-round picks? So could you package some of that to get into the fourth, to get into the third? Can you package other assets? Can you maneuver? Can you pivot around? So there are interesting things they can do, for sure. They have weird picks if you look at it just from where they are. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's 5 fifth-round picks. So, on that end, it's like, do you really want 5 fifth-round picks? Probably not. So how can you take those assets, get creative, get innovative, move around, either for picks or for veteran players or cap casualty?
Is this maybe possibly the year where you kind of pencil in the idea of trading down? I know that's unheard of with the Saints. They don't ever do it, but if there ever was a time to do it, given their needs, given their lack of ammo, could it be this year?
This is what I'm glad you asked. This is the only way I'd be cool with trading down from 14 to get some of those assets to get some middle round picks. If the 5-6 people that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, if the Dallas Turners and the Jared Verses and the Latus and the Brock Bowers, players like that, those true impact players that all could be there, but it wouldn't blow my mind if most of them did get taken in the top 13 picks before us. If that happens and you're staring at a couple of offensive linemen and you're between, the guy from Oregon State or Guyton out of Oklahoma or whoever it might be, if they're there and you're thinking, we're at 14, we could take one of them here, or we could drop back to 21 and probably take the other one there. If that's the situation, sure, drop back, because the difference in those 2 offensive linemen probably isn't much at all, or any of the 2 offensive linemen that you could have on your big board. So in the rare case that all 5 or 6 players that we have identified that would be great for the Saints, the defensive ends, the edge rushers, Brock Bowers, talked about all of them a million times, right? Maybe even throw in a couple people like Malik Neighbors. Could he possibly drop? Whatever. Just throw those people into a bucket. If all of them are gone and you're going into that second bucket, like I said, of offensive linemen, definitely a position we need, but definitely a position we can address in free agency or later in the first round, then it probably is a good time to go ahead and drop down, see what happens, see how everything falls, and then take your offensive lineman there.
Yes. Look, I've been a Saints apologist on this issue for over a decade. All the bad words they say about me on Twitter every time I try to defend their salary cap, people could say the bad words about me for defending why they didn't trade down for all those years. I used to think people just liked it because Bill Belichick did it, and everything Bill Belichick did was right, even though it didn't always work out for him either. But with the Saints, there were so many years where they only needed to add a couple of players. If they had an 8-person draft class, they didn't have room for 8 players to make their team. It is completely the opposite now. This is an old team with a lot of guys who are going to need to be replaced in the next year.
Yeah, that's another thing you got to remember, right? The Saints are in a situation where it's the oldest team in the NFL, I believe. A lot of those players are reaching either the end of a contract or the end of their peak, age-wise. Alvin Kamara's 28, Derek Carr's 33, Taysom Hill's 33, right? And they're all kind of ending at the same time. So the Saints are going to have to refill those positions at some point in the next couple of years. They're going to have to refill impact positions and add to the roster. They're also in the unique situation where they can't really do that with free agency as far as like a big sweeping, signing pool because of their quote unquote salary cap hell. The easiest way for the Saints to replenish, the easiest way for the Saints to add to the roster, add impact players, is through the draft. There's the caveat, though, of you have to hit on those draft picks. Now, I know the idea is it's easier to hit on a draft pick if you have a third-round pick versus a fifth-round pick, right? People think there's more talent in the third round, and it sounds like that does make sense. And in a way, it does. But there are talented players to be had. Recent players that I've used as an example are the Puka Nakuas, the Isaiah Pacheco's, the Kyron Williams. All those guys were drafted after the fifth round. So just because a bulk of your picks and a bulk of the Saints' picks are like day 3, right? A bunch of their picks are later. That's okay. We just have to be diligent. We just have to hit these picks. I mean, it's really important. We can't have the Garrett Grayson years over again. We can't have another Ian Book. We can't have that happen. When we are getting Garrett Grayson and Ian Book and Jake Haener, other teams are getting Isaiah Pacheco and Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. So we've got to figure out, as far as our player evaluation, how we're doing that, how we're doing player evals, and we've kind of hinted at this before that I think a lot of player eval and the scouting was still in the same mindset of having Sean Payton, where look, we've got Sean Payton. We can draft blank receiver out of Vermont Musical Tech. We can do that, and Sean Payton will make them good. We can draft a tight end out of the Florida Marine Institute. We can do that, and Sean Payton's offense will probably make him okay, or having Drew Brees will probably make him okay. That's not the case anymore. We've got to draft good, talented players who stand on their own. We can't draft players anymore with the idea that we can mold them, we can shape them, we can develop them. Because since Peyton left, we really haven't proven we can do that. We've actually kind of proven the opposite. We've proven that we'll take players like Marcus Davenport, like Peyton Turner, like Trevor Penning, who are tried and true development projects, and we have got a big fat F for all of those projects, right? All of the projects that we've turned in have not looked good. We have not been able to develop anything. So we've got to shift that. We've got to shift that and draft players who are going to be impactful on their own.
Year or two. They have needs to get younger at like 6-7 different positions.
Yeah. Almost all.
And they don't have a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick right now. So, this more than ever is the year that I think I would see the value in having like picks 25 and 32 instead of pick 14, honestly.
It's not off the board for me. And I don't know. We've had some conversations. It doesn't feel like it's totally off the board. I don't know if it's ever totally off the board, but it feels a little bit more possible than other years, I think, for all the reasons.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm fine with it, but I think it's all the same thing, right? It's like the draft, and this is why I think draft picks are generally overvalued or generally thought of incorrectly, because you'll see a big trade, right? And you'll see a big trade, and you'll see like 6 picks go to a team. And people are like, oh, well, I mean, they just, they have all these picks now. They have all this. But no one really cares about what those picks turn into. There's a lot of trades where a team will get like 5-6 draft picks, and they turn them into absolutely nothing. They turn them into a bunch of guys who play for 2-3 years, don't get signed to a second deal, and then they go off somewhere else. I don't care how many picks you have. You can have, we've seen drafts where the first overall, second overall, third overall picks are busts. We've seen drafts where the best player in the draft comes from the third round. It happens every year. So just because you acquire draft picks, if your draft strategy, if your player evaluation strategy, if your player development strategy, if all of that isn't aligned, you can have 30 draft picks in one draft. It's not going to matter. If you can't find the players, if you can't find, just think, if you had, and I'm just making up picks here, but if you had like 5 first-round picks and you walk out of there with Zach Wilson, Justin Field, Trey Lance, players like that, Trent Richardson, you're coming out of there with those players. In the short term, it's like, wow, man, look at all that young talent. Look at all that, they had all these first-round draft picks, and they came out with the best running back on the board and the second and third best quarterback on the board and this wide receiver, and then 2 years later, it's like, man, none of these guys can play. And none of these guys did anything. So in that situation, you would much rather have a pick in the 6th round, 7th round, and 5th round if they turned into Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and Isaiah Pacheco. You'd much rather have that than the 5 first rounders if it turned into 5 busts. So just getting capital for the sake of getting draft capital, just getting draft picks for the sake of getting draft picks, doesn't mean anything. You got to know what to do with them. I mean, I know they're all in different draft classes, but if we come out of a draft and we're like, man, we moved around, we got all these picks. We have Marcus Davenport, Peyton Turner, Trevor Penning, and Jake Haener. It's like that's just a bunch of absolutely nothing. That doesn't impact your team at all. So I'm always less concerned about the round. I'm less concerned about how many picks. I'm less concerned about all that. I'm more concerned about what is the draft strategy, who are we going to get, what are those players going to do, what is the impact level, what's the plan. That's what I'm worried about. So it's a bit of a blend because the percentage of a better player obviously goes up the higher you go up in the draft, but we've just got to get better at identifying the players that we need, the players that we need to develop, and the developmental process.
As you just said, and it's the one time where I feel like it makes a lot of sense. And if you aren't trading a Marshawn Lattimore and you want to get another pick in the first 45 picks or whatever, kind of got to make the move. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if it's actually going to happen. But for the
am I
first
betting
time,
on it happening? That's a different
for
question.
the first time
I'm not.
ever, though, when they come up on the clock, if nothing is done, like I will kind of be prepared for it maybe to happen. We aren't tipping anything here. I'm just saying it's finally within the realm of possibilities, I think.
I think if I'm watching the draft, and not to spoil it, not to give away teasers or anything like that, but there's a very high chance that we will do a live stream during the draft, during the first round of the draft. We'll probably do a live stream, and that'll probably be on Twitch and Twitter/X. I will give the details as we lead up to the draft, but it's something I have in the works. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But if I'm watching the draft and Bowers goes and Verse goes and Turner goes and Latu goes, and it's starting to look like, man, there's not really that many impact players. There's not that many of these players that I originally wanted or was interested in. If I'm looking at that and I'm seeing on Mel's big board, like, oh, the Saints could take one of these 4 offensive linemen, I would be really hoping, I'd be crossing my fingers that we do trade down. So that is a situation where I'd be totally cool with it. But Vice Jared Versa, did you get it? That was off the top of the dome. I mean, again, ladies and gentlemen, the Vice Jared Versa, a.k.a. vice versa. You see what I'm doing here. It's a little bit of wordplay. The fact that that's just rattling off the dome, unbelievable. But vice versa, if I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the draft board and Brock Bowers is there and Latu's there, and we trade out of that and we trade down to go get an offensive lineman at pick 24, I'm going to vomit all over my keyboard. I'm going to vomit on my chest. I'm going to have to throw away my shirt because that'll be just such a wasted opportunity. So that's a good example of don't risk an impact player. Don't risk all that. Don't risk someone who can come in and be really, really good. Don't risk that just to recoup a 3rd round pick and another 2nd round pick. If that 2nd round pick and that 3rd round pick is going to equate to Garrett Grayson and whoever else. So it depends on what you're going to do with it, but that's kind of where I come down on it.
For all your coverage on the Saints, keep it locked to New Orleans Football.
Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen. If you want combine coverage and all of that, make sure you're going to New Orleans Football. They are live in Indy, as you can see from the lobby of some Marriott. But they're locked in. So if you want on the ground coverage, I mean, Triplett's got his jogger sweats on. He's ready. He might be running the 40. He might be running the 40-yard dash at some point here. He's got the jogger sweats. He's got the tennies on. He's ready to roll. He's doing an interview now, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does a shuttle run immediately after this. So, yeah, about 10 feet away from the Continental Breakfast, New Orleans Football has all of your NFL Draft Combine coverage. I know that's where I'll go for any kind of Saints information I need during the Combine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, I mean, what are you doing? Go down and click the subscribe button. Join the fastest growing community on YouTube, the Skrmettaverse. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you in the next video.